Flight 229, you're cleared for departure. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You're listening to What the Tech.
Welcome to the What the Tech podcast, where we talk about business and office technology and put our 20 years of expertise to discussing trends and issues impacting the workplace.
This podcast is brought to you by Global Tech Worldwide, your technology office experts that's been around for 20 years, providing trusted, personalized office IT solutions. Check them out at amazon.com/TECK. That's amazon.com/TECK.
Still paying for slow, outdated business internet? Why would you do that? Everything is so expensive in 2022. But listen, you might not realize you can go to circuitloops.com, instant quotes to easily compare with what you're paying for and find the upgrade that's right for you. It's that easy. Go to circuitloops.com.
On today's podcast, we have Dr. Jeremy Weisz of Rise25, who will tell us what makes a great podcast. And just to give you a little bit of background on Jeremy, I've met Jeremy a few years back. We met at an Amazon conference, and then he hosted an event in Las Vegas with a bunch of entrepreneurs, which was a smashing success. We were just chit-chatting about how it's helped launch a lot of folks to another level. It may be because of his secret sauce that he's got that he keeps under tight wraps. I'll let him speak for himself. Dr. Jeremy Weisz.
Thank you both for having me. This is exciting. It's good to see you again, finally.
Likewise, it's good to see you. All this crazy hullabaloo of being locked inside. I've got cabin fever right now that I would love to shake off, but I'm sure that at some upcoming conference, we'll get to meet again and see each other face to face. Where are you checking in from today, Jeremy?
I am right outside Chicago. So it's still, even though it's the end of May, almost June, it's still cold here. So I don't recommend it yet.
Stay away.
Not yet. Winter in Chicago, not the most popular haven.
Never ends.
Jeremy, do you want me to go by Dr. Jeremy? Jeremy, what's comfortable for you? What should I?
Jeremy is good. Jeremy is good. And if we're on the basketball court, I will take Dr. J. But by trade, my background is actually in biochemistry and as a chiropractor. So I went to Madison, studied biochemistry, and went on to become a chiropractor. But now I run Rise25, and I've been podcasting for over a decade now and helping people launch and run podcasts. And you mentioned about connecting views. For me, it depends on the type of show, right? For me, we focus more on the B2B type of shows. So we don't, if it's a comedy show, if it's a true crime show, this is not up our alley. This is not like a group that will plot out and script the story. So for those, they probably want views, right? Even I would argue for the comedy ones, it's relationships. So for me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And even for the comedy ones, I'm sure I can find an angle even for that, right? Like they're having their colleagues on talking about comedy. But listen, let's say, Rolando, I am opening for a show or I have a show and I want to bring you on. You were friends. I'm like, hey, Rolando, you want to come and you want to do a bit on my show? Do you want to open for me? Do you want to close for me? So even on those shows, even though the way they monetize it may be viewership, but they could get on each other's shows. So I am about the relationship way trumps the views. And honestly, I don't even look at my views.
That's one of the things I wanted to ask you, because tied to that is podcasting really for everybody? You just said something that, your niche is to go after business or entrepreneurs that want to use their business and leverage podcasting. But is podcasting for everybody?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'll say my belief is if you have a business, you should have a podcast, period. Okay. Would you have a website for your business? Of course you would. And there's a lot of podcasts, there's a lot of websites out there. It doesn't matter, right? So podcasting is a Swiss Army knife, right? So it is content marketing, it is SEO, it is relationships, it is all of those things in one. And so now what I would say, Rolando, is who it's not for. Okay. Someone would say, Jeremy, I don't like talking to people. Then you probably shouldn't do a podcast. But I would still say, does someone from your company like talking to people? Then they could do it for your company. You don't have to do it. Or I don't get energized by it. It really drains my energy. Fine, then find someone else at the company to do it. But so it doesn't have to be you. If the thought of it sounds daunting and terrible, then then don't do it if you don't think it's fun. But what I set out to create over a decade ago, which was I just wanted to show up, have the conversation, and run my business and not worry about all the other details. So essentially, that's what we do for other companies. Is I did it for myself because that's what I wanted. I just wanted an easy button and just show up and not worry about all the minutia. But I would say if you don't like talking to people and the sound of it doesn't excite you, then I still push back. We still have clients, Orlando, that they're maybe a little bit introverted, but they know I should be doing this. And it steps them out of their comfort zone. And even when we're working with some people, we will record episodes for them, with them, about their thought leadership, which it should be the founder of the company or CEO coming from that, talking about that, the vision of the company and about the company. So even if they don't want to show up for the day-to-day interviews, they should participate and do some, and it is valuable for the company.
I'm sure. I have a question. Is there any company, or I should say, is there any industry that's maybe too mundane or boring that couldn't benefit from having their own podcast?
Yeah.
You know what?
I love the mundane and boring, to be honest with you. We have companies that are in the pest control business. They have a podcast.
Really?
Rubber seals. They have a podcast. Just the most
kidding.
random niches you've heard of have a podcast. And because it's not like people think of it as the most common question I get is, how do I get downloads and subscribers? And these aren't for mass consumption, right? I say to these people, if you get 1 million downloads, if you get 10 million downloads, it doesn't matter. Like for your business, like they're serving a niche, right? And those people in that niche care about this stuff. I just had an interview last week, and I don't have approval to say their name, but they're in kind of the natural gas industry. And we are talking about some regulations in the industry. If you heard this, Dave, you'd be like, you may fall asleep. Okay. But the people in this industry, this is really important information. It's stuff that they want to know and need to know to run their business so they don't get fined in their business. So it's really not for mass consumption, right? So even if it serves a couple hundred people in that industry, it's doing its job and it's doing what it's supposed to do.
I would think working with people in those types of industries, like pest control, for example, we're in a media world, audio, video. When we were getting ready for this, there was a lot of setup. How do you get over, or how do you assist folks that they're technology timid? They don't know where to start and they may let it overwhelm them. Do you help them overcome that?
Yeah, and we try and keep it as simple as possible. You guys are experts in this, in what you guys do. So to plug what you guys do, I've purchased stuff from your company, and you guys have just rock solid, amazing customer service, and you really know what you're talking about. But I try and keep it as simple as possible. So like, I know we plug your website. These people can buy equipment from your website, and they should. What's the best website for you guys that people should check out?
They could go to global-text.com.
Okay. Yeah. You can go there, buy your equipment. You can get lots of amazing stuff, but I keep it simple. If you have a USB mic and you have Zoom, you're good to go. Now, years ago, I was using Skype, and I was doing video years ago, and it was not as easy as it is now. There was no Zoom, and people are like, what's Skype? How do I set up an account? Now everyone's used to using Zoom. So literally you could be all in with a Zoom account and a USB mic. A lot of time, Dave, that used to be a question that we would get more of, but now there's 80-year-olds on Zoom with their grandkids. And so one's used to using Zoom now. They've been forced to.
That's true.
So it's actually not come up as much lately.
And yeah, it has become a norm in the past two and a half years. And for us being hardware providers, it's really opened up the door to having more relationships with more people in new types of industries that maybe normally we wouldn't have had that reach. But the limitations of being locked down and needing to be able to communicate better has been very eye-opening for generations of people or user groups that haven't had to get exposed to it in the past. So I pick up exactly what you're laying down there.
Yeah, man, I joke around. If you're watching the video, you're looking at Rolando's setup. It looks beautiful and amazing. And you can see Dave's mic and mine. I say, listen, you too can have this set up for like $150. Not crazy. I wish I don't try and make it complicated. It's you get a USB mic and Zoom, you're good to go.
It's good. So you remove that, you just help and you remove that barrier right away.
Exactly.
And so what you're saying is, it sounds like the barriers of entry for podcasting are very low today compared to several years ago when you were starting in the 2010 or in the early 2000s. And but even though the barriers of entry are low, and you're saying everybody can have a business and that has a business should have a podcast, how much time and effort really should somebody put in? Is this something that if I get into podcasts, should I get better at speaking? I'm not a public speaker, but maybe I should get better at being comfortable at speaking with other people. How much time a week do I need to devote to this thing? What would you say to somebody that maybe is at that beginning of the journey and contemplating going into this?
Yeah, and I think the reason questions people ask me about technology or setup or down subscribers or time really goes into the case of that's not why people quit, by the way. And if you look at the podcasts out there of whatever, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and now, I don't remember the exact stats who came out with them, but something like, let's just say it's 85%, it's maybe more than that, of podcasts out there and they quit doing it, or they quit doing it after 5 episodes. I don't know the exact stat, so people can check. You can
It's really
check
short.
it, but the point is it's short, and the reason is it's not about the setup. It's not about it's about making sure it makes sense for your business. And again, I'm only talking if someone has an actual business behind it to make it work. So you're saying, how much time do I spend on it? If someone it's delivering value to their network and their business, it's making sense, and it's a great content, which is serving their potential clients, it's serving their potential referral partners, their current referral partners, and their current clients, someone will never stop doing it because it's actually serving their business. So how much time let's say someone's lifetime value of their client is $10,000, $20,000. If I go, if you got one client a month, how much time would you spend doing it? Or if you got a referral partner, 3 referral partners this year that led to 6 referrals, how much time do you spend doing it? And here's the argument I make, Rolando, is these are people you should be talking to anyways. It's not like you have to carve out another 10 hours a week, right? So if you do 1 episode a week, like I do 2 to 3 episodes a week, and I have for almost a decade. But these are people I want to be talking to. These are people I have on my calendar anyways. So it's not like I have to carve out another 10 hours a week. But let's say you did 1 episode a week. Can you carve out an hour and a half a week to jump on a conversation? Most likely you're probably already having that conversation. It doesn't have to be a huge investment in time. And even if it was, I argue it's worth it, because these are people in your network that you want to be featuring and you want to be talking to. Or let's say you and Dave are talking and you're talking about the latest and greatest technology and setup. This is something that your potential clients will consume. And then without you even having to talk to them, they're like, oh, these people know what they're talking about. This product sounds cool. I'm going to go buy it. But at a minimum, how much time, if you want to be spending an hour and a half a week, again, I do research on people ahead of time, so I'm spending a little bit more. But if I have 2 to 3 episodes a week, then maybe I'm spending 5 to 7 hours a week on it. But in my mind, it's the most important time I have to connect with and learn about some of my greatest relationships.
You alluded to, it's not about the views. If you're doing it in this fashion where you're really providing value inside your business and your experiences as a business, then in leveraging those relationships, how have you found the best way for folks to get those guests?
Yeah.
You have some golden geese maybe that you're trying to go after, or some folks that you just know at an arm's length through somebody else. How do you approach those people to get them on your podcast so you can have that conversation and start building those relationships?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first thing we do because listen, anyone can talk into a mic and publish it online. How does it fit into the business? So really we focus in on the full strategy. So usually before we even launch a show, we go through and construct a 6 to 12 month plan for that podcast and what that looks like and how it's going to serve the business itself. The first step of that is what you mentioned, which is a very important step, which is create a Dream 100 list. Okay. Now we brainstorm under 17 different categories with someone, and it's more like a Dream 200, 300 or more. But I have no episodes. I've never done this before. People have like trepidation on reaching out to people, but I tell people, listen, it's super easy. Let's not overcomplicate it. There's something called your cell phone, and you have contacts in the cell phone. And the people we work with, they're not newbie to business. They've been in business for 5, 10, 20, 30 years. They have amazing connections. Right. And you guys have amazing connections. In your cell phone, I tell them, like, let's scroll through, and there's people that are amazing guests in their cell phone. Super simple. Or in their Facebook group, Facebook network, or LinkedIn network already. And those people will respond within 5 minutes and say, yeah, I'd love to do this with you, right? When you reached out to me, I didn't ask what's the story? Like, how many views did you have? What subscribers? Like, we have a relationship. I'm like, yeah, let's do it.
And we've had guests that have asked that question. They want the press kit, and they want to know how many followers do we have on this platform versus that. We've had that before.
Yeah. And here's the thing. When people ask that, really what they're asking is they don't care about your viewers so much. They care about social proof. Right. So if I tell someone working with, if someone responds back with that, either they're a PR person because they need to report back to their client, but the client themselves, or when I'm reaching out directly, usually I don't get those questions. If it's a PR person, they're maybe needing to justify that to someone else. But the person I'm reaching out to themselves, what they're really asking is, give me the social proof of why I should come on this show, which I provide that. Like when I send a cold outreach message to someone, let's say I read someone's book, right? Let's say I had Chris Voss on the podcast on Inspired Insider. If you've heard of Never Split the Difference, the book, fantastic book. I listened to an Audible. I'm like, this guy would be amazing. Reached out, cold outreach. I never said download subscribers. If you ask me right now, Roland, I don't even know. I can't tell you. But I provided enough social proof in that email. This is copywriting. Really, social proof in the email to say, whoa, okay, this is worth my time. So I can cite other people as social proof. Like, what social proof can you use? Other people you've had on the podcast. I've had the co-founder of Pixar and P90X, but let's say you're just starting. You don't have any guests, right? You still have social proof in the companies you've worked with, right? So we've had partnerships with Plantronics and this and Samsung, and we've worked with them for over 20 years. And here's some of the products and people, and we've been in business for this amount of time. So there's always social proof with the companies you've worked with, the partnerships you've had in the past, the years in business. And then you don't want to cold outreach to the most important people right when you're starting the show anyways. So you want to get a few people under your belt. So you get a few, and this goes into, we did an episode on the podcast on the 5 different types of episodes I believe everyone should be creating for their podcast. Okay. Right. Okay. One of those type of episodes is authority episodes, right? People who are maybe big in the industry. And listen, I'm sure there's people huge in a niche industry that you and I have never heard of, but if you mention them in that industry, people are like, oh my God, how'd you get that person? And if you're in that niche, usually you probably know people in that particular industry. An example is I had someone mention another guest. And here's another thing. When you have guests on, they'll mention other resources and people. And so that leads to your next potential interview. So the people you have on lead to more great guests for the company, right?
Agreed 100%. We had that happen last summer when we were starting to get going on our podcast, and we had one guest, Steve Cadigan, he's a former LinkedIn HR exec, and he enjoyed himself so much. I said, hey, do you think you have a couple of folks that he's sure. And we got 3 more guests off of his appearance on our podcast. So 100%, you're right.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm betting.
And like-minded individuals, and we had a chance to learn so much from him. So Steve Cadigan, author of Workquake, and fantastic read if you haven't checked that out, but it's what are we calling it? The Great work migration.
That's what he calls it, migration.
But that's a good point. I guarantee you, the people that you reached out to, either you reached out to and said, hey, Steve mentioned you, or Steve introduced you, not one of them asked you how many downloads, subscribers, or asked you for a media kit. They're like, the trust gets transferred and you're like, oh, you're a friend of Steve's? Let's do this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Actually, one of the guests said that it almost word for word what you said. If Steve is good with it, I am too, and I trust Steve. So
yeah. So people are worried about that question off the bat, right? Around, they're like, how do I get guests? And I'm like, I'm sorry if I make it too simple, but it's not overly complicated. You have a network of people that you could ask, and that network leads to other people, and you can still do cold email or outreach on LinkedIn to get someone. You just have to provide enough social proof that is enticing and make it personal and have some fun with it. So
no doubt. Hey, Jeremy, I want to change directions a little bit because we're talking about people, and people like hearing other people. That's why we have podcasts. And so over the years, you've been doing this for over a decade now. Who stands out to you? You've interviewed so many wonderful guests. I've seen that you interviewed the president of Nordstrom's. I've seen that you talked to folks at Atari, I believe the founder of Atari. So many wonderful guests. I've seen other of your other podcasts as well. I have some that I've liked that I've seen on your show, but who would you say the top 2 or 3 that really wowed you, or you learned something fascinating or something eye-opening that came out as a result of that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that overall, when I think about some of the guests I've had, it centers me to hear some of these. They have big companies. Everyone's heard of their companies, and they went through the same struggles as everyone else. You mentioned Atari, right? I remember like certain stories from these interviews. He talked about how Steve Jobs offered him for $50,000 a percentage of Apple. I forgot what it was. Maybe it was like 30% of Apple, or maybe $30,000 for 50% of Apple. But it was $50,000 for whatever it was, 30% of Apple or whatever it was, and he turned it down. I don't know what that would be worth today.
Oh my God. Millions, easily.
And the co-founder of Pixar, like hearing the stories of Steve Jobs and George Lucas and the struggle they had to get this Pixar off the ground. The technology wasn't there. And you'd think, oh, it was a smashing success. But the struggle to raise money so they can keep going is amazing. And then Tony Horton, I had Tony Horton of P90X, and he talked about, again, he sold hundreds of millions of dollars of P90X. But I remember him driving from cross country because he wanted to be a trainer from, I think it was Pittsburgh to California. And the way he made his food and rent money was he was a street mime. So he put his hat on the street and do miming to make his food and rent money. And that's just a humbling thing to hear from someone. You always picture them as they've always been successful. But I love hearing the stories of just people, they put their pants on one leg at a time. And it's humbling to hear. And it's almost like therapy for me for entrepreneurship, because you hear they struggled and they had hard times. Okay, I can do it too. But one sticks out, Rolando, like a lot of companies people have never heard of that I've had on the podcast. And I remember Chris Ategeka. I check him out. I think there should be a movie made of him someday. I don't know. You can't make this stuff up. Just the perseverance. And what I learned from that interview with him is just to not take things for granted. So his parents died when he was young from HIV. He was living in a village in Africa, had to take care of his siblings from like a young age. I don't know if he was 8 or 9 or something. And just going to and from just to get fresh water was a task. And he started 2 nonprofits, a for-profit, won a lottery in the village to go to the US, graduated from Berkeley, got his PhD at Berkeley. But when he went on the plane, he had shoes for the first time when he was 18. And when he got on the plane to go to the US for the first time, someone handed him a bottle of water on the plane. And he said God descended from the heavens because he's used to walking hours, pumping the well for hours, walking back, and someone just hands him a bottle of water on the plane. Wow. And so it just, to me, it makes me think of I should appreciate the little things and the small things, not take things for granted as much, because I do take that for granted. Oh, there's a faucet over here that has clean water that I could drink whenever I want.
Yeah. Gary Vaynerchuk talks about we in this world, America, a lot of Western countries suffer from first world problems. And you remind me of something. Back in college, I went to the Ukraine, which is, it's come full circle. I was there when it first broke off from Russia, and I was there a month doing an archaeological dig. The day I got back and I went to the supermarket here for the first time in the US, I started crying. I was overwhelmed. I really was overwhelmed because while we were there for a month in the Ukraine, I mean, there was really hardly anything to eat. We were having borscht soup, bread that you could literally kill somebody with because it was so hard and stale, and one kind of soap that was available. We couldn't shower every day. And like you said, running water, it's precious to have that just whenever you want it on demand. But then to walk into a supermarket and 50 flavors of toothpaste, 100 different types of tissue paper, all of this, it was just like, for me, it was too much. And I was only gone for a month. So I could totally relate to that. And being in America, we enjoy all these creature comforts and we forget that millions, if not, I think the quote was like 800 million people have to go somewhere to get running water, and they don't have it.
It's crazy, right?
Absolutely.
Thanks for sharing that. It's unbelievable. And by the way, it was 33%. Nolan Bushnell's offered 33% of Apple for $50,000.
Oof. That's at least a couple $100 billion, maybe. I don't know what.
So I asked him why he turned it down.
Yeah,
he talked about it, but it's incredible.
So check out that podcast. What's the name of the guy again?
Yeah.
So that people go back.
Nolan Bushnell founded Atari and Chuck E. Cheese, and he was Steve Jobs' mentor, actually. So.
And he poo-pooed the whole thing. He's like, I'll pass.
His argument was, listen, if a 21-year-old punk kid came to you asking for $50,000, which in today's dollars is like whatever, $350,000, what would you have said?
Yeah,
I could see that. Who knew it was the next Steve? Who was the Steve Jobs?
I know who knew it was Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
I believe Bill Gates has a similar story as well. He's struggling and trying to get his Microsoft off the ground and all that. It sounds like a lot of good entrepreneurs are able to fight through the difficult times. I know that the stat on small businesses is that only 1% make it to year number 20, which we're celebrating our 20th year, and something like only 4% only make it to year number 10, according to the SBA. So you got to ride a lot of waves to make it to year 10 and then beyond that as well. And I would imagine there's a bunch of entrepreneurs that could relate to really struggling early on, but then you just got to keep pushing through, finding the waves that take you up as well as riding them when they go down, because not everything is up, right?
Totally. On a daily basis, you experience that.
Yeah.
So for businesses that are looking for growth opportunities, Jeremy, I really love some of the strategies that Rise21 suggests. So I've consumed some of your content. I'm super impressed with some of the mindset and some of the strategies that you're presenting to your clients. Now, I have a question. I heard you say once it was invite in terms of looking for guests. You said somewhere invite your ideal customer to join a podcast with you. And I wanted to ask you, have you invited ideal customers to your podcast, and have they turned into clients of yours?
That's a good question. And now I'm going to have to buy the domain Rise21 because he's Rise21. We're Rise25. So I think I'm going to have to buy that domain now.
I'm sorry.
You're good. I'm like, I like that. We came up with Rise25 actually after that event, Rolanda, that you were at, is because we didn't have a name of the company for a long time. We just did our thing, and people we sent them to, we just didn't even have a name. And we know that rising tides lift all boats. We want to rise in it. And then one of our clients said, I feel like you give me an extra hour of the day. So we're like, oh, yeah, I feel like I have 25 hours in the day instead of 24. And so we got Rise25. But I like the sound of Rise21 also. So ideal clients. So among the 5 different types of episodes I believe everyone should be doing, we talked about the big authority episode. We talked about one of them is an ideal potential client on, right? And really, Another one is strategic and referral partner. So to answer your question, I have had definitely, but you could have a guest on that checks multiple of these boxes, right? I can have someone who's a great referral strategic partner. They could be a great potential client as well. I tend to play the long game. So I love having my referral and strategic partners on, which means I can refer to them. They're a great resource for my network of people because I make 5 to 20 introductions every single day. So I'm always looking for great resources. And so I can refer to them. Also, they can refer to me. So I tend to default to, which is not right or wrong, this is me. I tend to default to referral and strategic partners. Now, some of those are potential clients. And so I don't go in with the mindset, and this is a mindset thing. I go in the mindset with everything, which is how do I give first? How do I give as much as possible and not expect anything in return? So even if I have a potential client on, so to go back to your question, I've had referral and strategic partners on that were also possible clients, but afterwards they know what I do. It's not really, I'm not like pitching them anything. They know what I do, and if they're interested, they'll ask me. And that's my philosophy. I was at an entrepreneur mastermind last week, and I got yelled at because I am too passive and too laid back about that. I'm just like, they'll ask me, they're like, and was in, these people are from the New York, New Jersey area, Rolando, and they're like,
a lot of those.
They're like, you better. I go, why are you so passive? You should be asking. One person in the room was on my podcast and said, yeah, if you would have asked me right afterwards, do you want to work with us? I would have said yes. I'm like, why don't you say yes now? But
is that the Midwest in you, or is that your personality?
I think maybe it's both. I don't know. But yes is the answer in short, Dave. Like, I've had they were also potential clients, and we just had a great time, great interview. And afterwards, they're like, you know what? We've been thinking of starting a podcast. I'm like, cool, let's talk. And it resulted in working with them. But they were also they check both of those boxes, I guess you could say.
So would you say, Jeremy, so you're saying referrals. So we're in the products business. So you were talking about people even being natural gas business, that's a very even more niche than what we do. So we're in the products business, but we're more in the people should sound good business, I would say. We talk to people outside of just our niche. We like we mentioned Steve, he was in LinkedIn as an HR guy. We've talked to folks a teacher. We've talked to a bunch of other people in the broadband business. Should you reach out beyond your industry so that you can create those relationships, even though, like I said, there maybe, I don't know, natural gas, there may be an interesting former Exxon CEO that we can interview. He's not at all in the sound business. He may be retired, but he may be a good guest for the podcast. Should I be doing something like that too?
Yeah, I would argue that would even maybe be in your industry as well, because even though you're in the sound business, if you're outfitting a whole corporation, let's say that person has 1,000 employees or something. So I would argue, who cares? They still are in that industry of we need to outfit especially with everyone, a bunch of people going remote, they need work setups at home. And so for you, it almost broadens who's got thousands of staff that would need to be outfitted with sound equipment or headsets or whatever it is. So I would say that fits perfectly, right? And I wouldn't even say sound, but what's a company, even go, it could be in the tech. It doesn't have to be tech, but what companies have 500, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 employees that we could have this provider outfit us with everyone. So I still think it fits into that. It goes back to who is the ideal client or customer for someone, and then backing up into who's that ideal referral partner. So I would say a CEO of a big company is client and referral partner a little bit. And maybe he knows other CEOs I'm sure he's in a CEO group with other people who they all have 1,000 staff too.
So it's okay to broaden outside of your industry. So what you're saying, because you're going to find some, like in what you're saying, this example, somebody that is in charge of a lot of people that are remote working and that could do that. And that could be the case for somebody else that's in a different industry. They could find somebody else that is a client or a referral that would be able to send either a lead or even direct business their way.
Yeah, it's funny because when we do the brainstorming of kind of that Dream 100 brainstorming under the 17 categories of what people think are totally different niches or industries, we start to piece together the commonalities that like, oh, here's the overlap between these industries. So they're not totally separate in a lot of ways. And then once you see the commonalities in like maybe the 3 industries, there's maybe industry 4, 5, and 6 that they've never even thought of going into that has that same commonality as the other 2. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
yes, I would say as long as those commonalities exist, going into other industries, you're still serving the same ideal need and pain point.
Thanks for sharing that,
Yeah.
because that's for us really. We're a lot of what we do is transactional, and trying to create those relationships that actually impact the business, the bottom line. It's not always a straight line to get there. Sometimes, like you said, you have to play the long game, and then the long game, you would build those types of relationships where people would say, yes, oh yeah, I trust Steve 100%. I'll come on, or I'll be on, or I'll do whatever. And I guess the long game is what gets you there to that level of trust. What does he want? I want the same thing.
Totally.
Jeremy, when you're working with a new client who they've learned what you do, they've come to you, they want your expertise, what does success look like for that client? What's the expectation? Clearly, it's not views. It's not views. So what is a successful relationship look like? What is the result that you're providing to that person outside of dissemination of a podcast that your team has done the editing and the publishing of? Outside of that, what does success look like if it's not viewership or followers?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because people say, well, how do we measure that? I mean, it's quite simple. It's really simple. You can look back over the past year and look at the guests you've had on and see who you formed deeper referral partnerships with, who's referred you anyone, and also who has become a client. But also, I had someone send me a voice text last week and they said, Jeremy, and this person, anytime they have a success, they'll just send me a quick voice text. And they said, I had someone come in and they they use it in their sales funnel, right? So if someone inquires into their help desk, hey, I'm interested in your services, they'll say, hey, cool, these are popular episodes. Listen to these couple episodes. By the time the person got on the phone with them, maybe a week later, they had listened to 3 episodes, and what is usually was a 3-step conversation of talking about the services and everything. It was within the first 10 minutes, they're like, hey, I listened to the episodes. I'm ready to go. Let's do this. So it shortened the sales cycle for them in a big way because they're using those episodes in their funnel when someone inquires. And then also just someone who already has referred before. Let's say, Rolanda, you've already referred me someone before, but maybe you referred me someone like 2 years ago and you forgot about me. And so it's all the time where I go, hey, I will give you a profile on the podcast. I'll mention you. I'll make sure to give you some love. And then you're just top of mind with each other. And so success is that person, instead of once a year, they referred 1 person, they referred 3 people, right? And so for a business with a high client lifetime value, 1 referral partner or 1 client for the year is huge for some of these companies. So you can track back to shortening the sales cycle, getting a client, or a deeper referral partnership, which in the end means referral of more clients.
That's just awesome. That's well summarized, Jeremy. I want to ask you and put you on the spot some rapid fire questions. There's no right or wrong. These are your answers. What was the biggest surprise from doing a podcast?
I mentioned it before, which is the biggest surprise, which is always surprises me still, is some of the biggest companies trudged through mud and crap to get to where they're at. Yeah, listening to the founder of Uggs, just like you think, oh, this is an iconic brand, just almost going out of business multiple times.
I'm surprised that even happened, but Uggs, you're competing against a lot of shoe businesses, right?
Oh yeah. Shoe Dog, I don't know if either of you listen to Shoe Dog, Phil Knight's book of the founder of Nike. Same thing. It was like, wow, I had no idea the ups and downs that Nike had, right? So that's definitely always surprises me, even though it shouldn't at this point.
Yeah, and they were the underdog forever. I've heard his story. It's still incredible that now they're really the dominant gorilla, the big kahuna in that space. Let me ask you about turn it to podcasters themselves. Joe Rogan or Howard Stern?
Joe Rogan. I love them both, actually, but Joe Rogan, I love the diversity of guests he has and the different, really long form conversations. Howard Stern's obviously hilarious too, but I'll have to, if I had to choose, Joe Rogan.
Okay, I love Howard Stern. He keeps me in stitches, and with all the characters that he's got on his show, like his own homegrown, as he called them, whack pack. I'm laughing for like hours.
Hey,
Listening.
Joe Rogan's got his group of his whack pack. I shouldn't even say whack pack. If it wasn't for Joe, I probably wouldn't know half of the comedians that I'm huge fans of today, and half of the very brilliant people that I have been exposed to. I thought it was all about fun and games with him, and then when you get a little bit deeper, it's more than that. Yeah,
he does. He does have deep conversations there.
Yeah,
he does. He does. And I love how Howard, I don't know how he does it. People that don't share stories publicly, celebrities or otherwise, and then he just breaks them down and just start talking about stuff they've never talked about publicly. He just has a gift for really weaving the story and coming back. Even if they resist the first time, he'll come back again and he'll get them to say, yeah, I did this, or I know I was into that kind of stuff. It's just amazing. I would imagine at some point, when you start, it's probably just you and the microphone, like you said, and you start going. But at some point, if things start heading in the right direction, you reach out to folks like yourself at Rise25 that have a team and can start doing some of the stuff for you to make it easier.
Yeah, if someone has questions about podcasting in general, they can check out rise25.com. And we are an easy button, right? And so we want someone to build the relationship, run their business, let us handle all the rest of the stuff for them.
All right.
Happy to help if you have questions. Happy to answer anything that you have.
Jeremy, is there anything else that you want to leave us with? Any other thoughts or ideas? Anything else that you have that you want to put out there that you want to push to our audience?
No, I think just check out more episodes of What the Tech with you guys. You guys have some great guests, and check out more episodes of Inspired Insider where I feature guests. And if you have questions, you can check out Rise25.
All right, Jeremy, thank you for coming on today.
Thanks for listening to What the Tech. Be sure to check out our other episodes featuring awesome tech and amazing guests. Find them on circuitloops.com or wherever you consume your favorite podcasts.